Wysteria, energy, twister. Hello everyone, welcome back to the wonderful world of the fairies. Let's continue right where we left off. We are now on the Cold Lad, and it's spelled C-A-U-L-D, Cold Lad of Hilton. The Cold Lad was a brownie living in Hilton Hall, in the Vale of the Weir, England. Servants claimed they could hear him knocking around in the kitchen at night and singing a sad song. The servants were not appreciative of how Cold Lad would rearrange the utensils and cookware every night, so they conspired to rid themselves of him in the usual way. A small green cloak and a hat were left out for him to discover neatly folded next to the kitchen hearth. They spied on him, saw him try the clothes on, and then dance about the room in great delight. At the first crow of the cock, he disappeared, calling out he never would be seen again. And of course, like many of the stories, there's so many different versions out there you can find. That is not the only one. The Cocoa is an injurious spirit from the folklore of the Quichua tribes in the highlands of Peru. Described as looking like a flying cat-like being, this nature spirit brings hail and lightning, destroys crops, urinates rain, and kills with its lightning. Larger than a domestic cat, it is said to be grey with black stripes. It arches its back and spits hail when threatened. Koa sponsors sorceresses and gives them their powers. It will not harm farmers who make daily offerings to it. The Kiab, the Scottish fairy Kiab, the killing one, is a murderous fairy of the Highlands. It has a reputation for killing both cattle and men. That's nice. The Seask, Scottish Highland, the Skeesk or the Tuft is a mermaid, having the upper body of a woman and the lower body of a salmon. Injurious by nature, the only way to kill this creature is to discover where it has hidden its soul, usually in an egg or shell, and then destroy it. To see one while out at sea is considered a bad omen or an ill omen. Fishermen would take the chance of confronting this fairy animal, for if they were successful in capturing one, it was compelled to grant its captor 3 wishes. If the fisherman is kind-hearted and good-looking, and can convince the Seask to live with him, his luck would be perpetual. It's a shapeshifter, though, as well. It can shapeshift into a beautiful woman to be his wife. And there are some Scottish families who claim to be descendants of this type of being. Sebran, born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus, and the Tethys. She was in Oceanad. The Cephaldwar. Welsh fairy lore, the Cephaldwar is a water horse. I think we've already discussed these. They're like the Kelpie. They're described as looking like a small but beautiful animal grazing along a riverbank. It will tempt the unwary to climb upon its back. As soon as it's mounted, the Cephaldwar will jump into the air, fly about, and buck its rider off from a fatal height. There's a few stories of these creatures being, successful in killing or breaking the bones of people and even plunging into watery depths. In South Wales, the Cephaldwar appears as a small horse, and it allows weary travellers to ride upon its back, and after a wild ride, unceremoniously dump him in the river. It was described as being a luminous and sometimes winged steed. However, in North Wales, this fairy animal was a shapeshifter with a murderous addendum. There it was described as being dark and having fiery eyes. Most often, the Cephaldwar was seen along the coastal shore, appearing as having a dappled grey or sand-coloured coat. His hoofs were pointed backwards, as if it could entice someone to ride it, would plunge its rider then into the ocean foam. And there's many different variations and different sizes of the Cephaldwar. It depends just which part of, Wales you are in. Calenio, one of the Oreads, she was a nymph from the classical Greek mythology, and she was born of the daughters of Titan Atlas. So, another one, I guess. Celiano, and she has a variation of Celianio. one of the 7 daughters of Atlas. That's what she was. Atlantide, basically. Cephissus, one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus, and Tethys. She was an Oceanid. Circeus, one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus, and Tethys. She was an Oceanid too. Cethelion, Irish mythology. Cethelion is the queen of the Fomorians, said to be Buck-toothed. She was the wife of the Fomorian king Balor. A prophet, she saw the downfall of her people and their defeat the Tuatha de Danann. Although the Fomorians did not win at the Battle of Magturid, Cethelion, armed with foreknowledge and a poisoned casting spear, was able to kill the Tuatha de Danann chief Dagda. Sito, Oketo, meaning whale, one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys, an Oceanid she was. She was also classed as one of the Naiads and the Nereids as well. Chalcis, also known as Chalkis. In classical Greek mythology, Chalcis was one of the 12 Asopides, Naiads, daughters of Asopus. And they were nymphs of the river Asopus, basically. Chalcomede, a nymph in classical Greek mythology, a Maenads, actually, the collective name of the daughters born of canonical muse. Changeling. Obviously, a changeling is a belief that it is a fairy. When a fairy steals a human child, what they leave behind is a changeling. The reasoning behind that is very long, and it can be anything. Once you work out that it is a changeling, it could turn into a small old dwarf. It could even be a plank of wood, basically. The reason for stealing human babies and replacing them with fairy changeling are numerous, and some sources claim this was done because the fairies, also known as the Tuatha de Danann, are a real race of hidden people who need to replenish their bloodlines due to the years of their own inbreeding. Other possible explanations include taking a human child to deliver it to Teeth, a 7-year tribute paid to the devil. Fairies see human babies as wonderfully beautiful. They desire to have one, be it as a lover, plaything, or even a slave. And trust me, the stories do vary, and there are so many stories out there you could look into when you type in changeling children or a changeling child, or changelings in general. There will be so many, like literally loads. Chariolo, also known as Chariklo. The mythology of ancient Greece, Chariolo was a nymph born of the daughters of Apollo, and she was the wife of the centaur Chiron, the mother of the 2 children as well. The Charites, also known as the Graces and the Grataia. In ancient Greece, the Charites, known as the Graces in ancient Roman mythology, were the 3 sisters, according to the Greek oral poet Hesiod. And again, we come to these Charites, they were attendants of the goddess Aphrodite and the god Hermes, but they were also venerated independently as muses of botanical abundance, creative inspiration, human fertility and moisture. They were personification of beauty, charm and grace, and sometimes associated with love also. In fact, they were associated with many different things through the time, I can assure you. Charopeia was one of the Maenads, the collective name of the daughters born of the canonical muse, another one. And through time, there's actually very many of them. Cheney's hounds, dandy dogs, or wish hounds, from the local folklore of Cornwall, England, in the parish of St. Tieth, comes the story of the Cheney, the old squire. It is said after his death that Cheney and his pack of spectral fairy hounds would hunt an area now called Cheney's Downs. The baying hounds can be seen and heard most often during bad weather. Wish hounds, a breed of fairy dog popular in the folklore of Dartmoor, England, is likely the same story of the Cheney, but retold in a different area. The wild hunt, said to be led by the devil himself, was sometimes associated with the Cheney's hounds, Dandos and his dogs, and Hela's raid. The Chesiad. Chesiad was a nymph of Mount Caretes in classical Greek mythology. Chesme. Chesme, meaning fountain, is a vampiric fairy cat, a nymph from Turkish mythology. It lives in the water and lures young men to their death by singing hypnotically, much like a siren. And if you remember, we did a story called Johnny King and the Goblins, and in that story, there was poor little Chesme. Lutin, also known as Le Cheval Béard, Cheval Béard, folklore of Normandy, France. They appears in the guise of a horse bridled and saddled, and it is called the Le Cheval Béard. This malicious fairy will then attempt to entice a rider to mount upon its back. Should this happen, it will begin to kick and rear, and eventually, after a long, wild ride, it would dump its rider into a body of water. It will either drown it, or it will do it in such a way that, well, the rider's not going to come off very good, let's be honest. Chi spirits. In Chinese fairy lore, chi spirits are helpful, invisible household spirits, known to attach themselves to families. Similar to brownies, these spirits are best known to rearrange furniture to ensure a better flow of energy. Chi spirits are made of pure energy and have no physical form. The Chi Nua. In Chinese folklore, the Chi Nua is a celestial nymph who is tasked with the responsibility of weaving the beautiful cloth, and this was used to tailor into clothes for the gods. The Chinese holiday, Qi is similar to St. Valentine's Day, originated from folktale telling the story of the love between Niu Lang, a simple cowherder, and a very beautiful Qi Han Nu. There are several versions of the tale told throughout China, Japan, and Korea, all dwelling on the strength of their enduring and endless love. Chin Chin Kobakama. Although attributed to Japanese lore, the Chin Chin Kobakama, lovely little spirit wearing a skirt, likely originated in Chinese mythology. These elf-like beings are described as looking like small but spry elderly men and women. They are most active during the hour of Ox or 2 a.m. Although considered benevolent, the Chin Chin Kobakama can be something of a nuisance, as they are extremely fastidious in keeping a clean house. They are particularly concerned with the thick mats covering the wooden floors in the home. So long as the home is clean, neat, and orderly, these fairies will be content. But they are known to gently tease those who are careless and messy, causing an array of annoyances around the house. Well, I think we know a lot of fairies that are like that, right? There's a lot. Chrysis, one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans Oceanus and Tethys, she was an Oceanid. There's also Chrysis. She was a Nereis. She was one of the mistresses of Demetrius in the classical Greek mythology. And there's, like I say, when you go look at Greece and their mythology and stuff, which we'll get into at some point, there is just so many, it's hard to go through them all. Churn Milk Peg. A variation is Acorn Lady. In folklore of West Yorkshire, England, the Arthuric, lazy, and pipe-smoking churn milk peg guards over unripe nut thickets. She's used by mothers as a nursery bogey to keep children from picking and eating unripe food by pinching them. If they persist and eat the nut, churn milk peg will cause them to suffer with bloating and stomach cramps. A male counterpart is Melch Dick. Circe, one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans Oceanus and Tethys. Circe was named an Oceanus, a divine shape-shifting enchantress who appears in many Greek myths. She's best known for her appearance in Homer's Odyssey. When Odysseus and his crew land on the island of Aea, or home, she transforms them into baboons and lions, but mostly pigs. Circe and Odyssey had a son together, Telegonus. And it's true, I've read that story. It's a good story as well, by the way, if you want to read it. It's very good. Clapcans. A nursery bogey from the folklore of Lancaster, England. A clapcans is an invisible fairy spirit or hobgoblin, considered to be one of the least offensive of its kind. Clapcans is known to make scary noises, sounding like the beating of an empty can. I guess that's why it's called that, right? Clapcan, because it sounds like one. Cleo, a sea nymph from Greek mythology. It's one of the named Nereid in the classical mythology of Greece. And then there's Cleo. She was Greek mythology and she was a water nymph. She's one of the Danaids, the collective names of the daughters of Danus. So yeah, and like I say, there is a lot of them about Cleodora, born of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys. Like I say, there's a lot of those. About Cleon. Classical Greek mythology, Cleon was one of the 12 Asclepiads, the Naiads, daughters of Asopus. They were nymphs of the river Asopus in Sicyonia and Boeotia, central and southern Greece. Cleopatra. In classical Greek mythology, Cleopatra was a water nymph and one of the named Danaids, the collective name for the daughters of Danus. Her name appears in a list of Danaids generated by Gaius Julius Hyginus, and that's 64 BC and AD 17, is a Latin author. Cleopatra wedded to Hermus. Some sources say Metalis, though. She killed him on the wedding night. So she's not much different from the actual Cleopatra. Clethrad. The alder tree was said to be watched over by the alder fairy, Clethrad, a water sprite. Clydna. Originally an Irish goddess of birds and the afterlife, Clydna was reduced to a being of the member of the Tuatha De Danann and the Fairy Queen of Southwest Ireland after the introduction of Christianity. A seat of power was in Munster, but Fairy Queen Evel claimed this region as her own. Clydna's home was within a fairy hill in Cork called Carrig Cleodna. She was associated with offshore rocks. Wow. According to legend, every ninth wave coming to the shore was called Clydna's wave and was said to be the largest. That's really cool. I like that. Cleodna. Cleodna is the fairy queen of South Munster and owes a reliance to King Finvara and Queen Onag, one of the Tuatha De Danann, and a woman of the sea as well. It's a very important woman. The Clitunno, born one of the daughters, 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys. She was an Oceanid. Clarichan, a sprite from Monster Island. Clarichan is similar to the leprechaun, but has a mischievous streak. It was often blamed for breaking eggs, curdling milk, stealing butter, and tippling over buckets, usually with milk in. Clarichan. In Cork County, Ireland, Clarishans are a species of boggart or nis, similar to the leprechaun, described as wearing a tall green cap with a feather sticking out of it, long blue stockings and a red jacket, and silver buckled shoes. These fairies look like wizened old men. Clarishans, like the indoors, they avoid work of any kind. Fond of alcoholic beverages, these fairies are found in wine cellars, typically drunk. The Clarishan manages to chase anyone away who would slip into the cellar and steal a quick drink, prevents casts from leaking, and keeps wine from turning bad. So they like to drink, basically. Cleithia, born one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys. She was an Oceanid in Greek mythology. Clitic, one of the 3,000 daughters of the Titans, Oceanus and Tethys, and again, she was an Oceanid. Court walker. Irish and Scottish men who claimed to have the ability to see fairies would say many times at a funeral banquet that they would see a fairy spirit known as a court walker. When this fae was present, they would not eat any of the meat offered for fear it had been poisoned by the spirit. These seers said co-workers were present to assist the pallbearers in carrying the coffin to the grave, and described the beings as looking exactly as a human being, perfect in every way, except for the fact it had taken on the guise of the deceased and was not acting properly. Considering the sombre occasion, the term co-worker was believed to have coined the 17th century fairy scholar Reverend Robert Kirk. Coblin. Described as looking like the British soldiers wearing red handkerchief with yellow spots, the coblin of the Welsh law were most often seen in mining communities. These fairies were described as being almost as tall as an average-sized person. So, there we have it, guys. the next set of the wonderful fairy beings. Please hit that like, share if you can, and also leave me a comment and consider subscribing. Many blessings. Wysteria, energy, twister.